A billionaire CEO, Marcus Sterling, believes his only son Ryan is everything he has in the world, until the day the boy starts choking during a charity dinner. While everyone freezes in shock, a 9-year-old girl named Livia, daughter of one of the waitresses, acts quickly and saves Ryan's life with a maneuver she learned at school. Intrigued by the courage and familiar eyes of the child, Marcus decides to investigate her identity. What he discovers changes his life forever. Livia is his biological daughter, whom he never knew existed, the result of a past relationship with Maria Santos, who raised the girl alone while working as a waitress. Maria had tried to contact him years ago, but could never get past the barrier of assistants and security guards protecting the billionaire. Now, faced with this extraordinary revelation, Marcus must learn to be a father to two very different children, while Livia discovers that the richest man in the city is her real father. An emotional journey about family, forgiveness, and second chances that will change everyone's lives forever. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like and share in the comments which moment moved you the most. Your interaction helps other people find these inspiring stories. The Sterling Foundation's annual charity gala was in full swing at the Grand Ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over Chicago's elite, all gathered to support children's education programs. Marcus Sterling, 45, stood at the head table, his perfectly tailored tuxedo reflecting his status as one of America's most successful tech entrepreneurs. His dark hair, touched with silver at the temples, framed a face that had graced countless magazine covers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus spoke into the microphone, his voice commanding attention, "tonight we're not just writing checks. We're writing the future for thousands of children who deserve the same opportunities our own kids have." The crowd erupted in applause as Marcus gestured toward his son Ryan, who sat looking uncomfortable in his formal attire. Ryan Sterling was everything his father had been at 17, but with the weight of expectation heavy on his shoulders. Tall and athletic from years of tennis and swimming, he had his father's sharp jawline, but his late mother's gentle brown eyes. Tonight, however, those eyes held rebellion. He'd argued with his father about attending another stuffy charity thing instead of his friend Jake's party. Behind the scenes, the kitchen staff worked frantically. Maria Santos, 38, moved efficiently between tables, her weathered hands carrying silver trays with practiced grace. She had worked for the catering company for 12 years, sending every penny toward her daughter's future. Despite exhaustion from working 2 jobs, her brown eyes still held warmth that had captured Marcus Sterling's heart 18 years ago, though he had no idea she was here tonight. At home in their small Southside apartment, 9-year-old Livia Santos sat at the kitchen table, homework spread before her. Her mother had left strict instructions: finish math, brush teeth, bed by 8:30. Livia's long dark hair fell around her shoulders as she concentrated on multiplication tables, her green eyes, so much like her father's, focused intently. She was small but possessed maturity that came from growing up where every day taught responsibility. "I wish Mom didn't have to work so late," Livia whispered. Looking at the clock reading 6:47 p.m., she understood her mother worked multiple jobs to provide, but some nights the apartment felt too quiet, too empty. She didn't know tonight would change everything. Back at the gala, Marcus noticed something odd. The new waiter at table 6 seemed nervous, constantly wiping his hands on his apron. Marcus had learned to read people during his rise to success, and something about the man's demeanor triggered his instincts. Before he could process the thought, the man accidentally bumped into Maria Santos, sending her tray of soup bowls crashing to the floor. "I'm so sorry," Maria exclaimed, immediately dropping to clean the mess. The nervous waiter hurried away, leaving her alone. As she worked, she glanced up and froze. There, not 20 feet away, sat Marcus Sterling, the man she had loved, the father of her child, the person she had tried desperately to reach 9 years ago when she discovered she was pregnant. Their eyes met for just a moment across the crowded room. Marcus felt a strange jolt of recognition, though he couldn't place where he might have known this woman. Maria quickly looked away, her heart pounding as she finished cleaning. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but never like this, never while on her hands and knees cleaning up a mess at his charity event. The evening continued with speeches and presentations, but Marcus found his attention wandering to the catering staff. There was something about that woman's eyes, something that stirred a memory he couldn't quite grasp. He had dated many people before building his empire became his sole focus. Before losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago made him retreat into work and protecting Ryan. As dessert was served, Maria worked near the head table, trying to remain invisible while stealing glances at Ryan. Her heart ached seeing how much he looked like his father, wondering what Livia would think knowing this young man was her half-brother. The secret she had carried for 9 years felt heavier tonight than ever. Ryan, meanwhile, grew increasingly restless. He had eaten very little, pushing elegant food around his plate while scrolling through his phone. His father had given him the usual lecture about representing the family name, about understanding privilege and responsibility. All Ryan wanted was to be a normal teenager, but being Marcus Sterling's son made that impossible. "You need to eat something," Marcus whispered during a break between speakers. "You've barely touched your food." "I'm not hungry," Ryan replied without looking up. "Can we leave after your speech?" Marcus felt familiar frustration that had defined their relationship since his wife's death. He loved his son desperately, but grief and company demands had created distance that seemed to grow wider each day. He didn't know how to bridge that gap, how to be both father and mother to a teenager struggling with his own identity. As the evening's final speech began, an unexpected phone call came from Maria. The catering manager approached with concern. "Maria, there's been an emergency. Your neighbor called. Your daughter is asking for you. She said she doesn't feel well." Maria's face went pale. Livia was never sick, never complained. If she was asking for her mother, something was seriously wrong. "I have to go," Maria said, untying her apron. "Please, I need to leave right now." The manager nodded, understanding a mother's instinct. As Maria gathered her things, she took one last look at Marcus Sterling. Still unaware she was leaving just as fate was about to reveal the secret that would change all their lives. She hurried out, her mind racing with worry about her daughter, never imagining tomorrow's newspaper would carry a story bringing her face to face with the past she had tried so hard to protect. The gala continued without her. But destiny's wheels had begun to turn. In moments, a simple accident would set in motion events that would unite a family that never knew it was broken and give a little girl the father she had always dreamed of meeting. But first, Ryan Sterling needed to take one fateful bite of his dessert. Maria Santos drove through Chicago streets with her heart pounding, her old Honda struggling to keep up with her urgency. The catering manager's words echoed. "Your daughter is asking for you." Livia never asked for anything unless truly important. At 9 years old, she had learned independence. To handle minor scrapes and homework struggles alone. If she was calling for her mother, something was genuinely wrong. Meanwhile, back at the Fairmont Hotel, Marcus Sterling wrapped up his speech to thunderous applause. "Remember, every child deserves a chance to dream big and achieve bigger. Thank you for your generosity tonight." He stepped away from the podium, feeling satisfaction from a successful fundraising event. The foundation had raised over $2 million for educational programs, money that would genuinely change lives. Ryan Sterling, however, was fighting his own battle. The elegant dessert before him, rich chocolate mousse with gold leaf garnish, looked delicious, but his stomach felt queasy. He'd been dealing with stress-related digestive issues since his mother's death, something his father attributed to teenage hormones rather than grief. The constant pressure of being Marcus Sterling's son had taken its toll. "You should try the dessert," suggested Mrs. Henderson, an elderly board member sitting beside him. "The chef is supposed to be world-renowned." She had known Ryan since he was small, remembered when he used to light up at fancy events, excited to try new foods and meet interesting people. Now he seemed withdrawn, carrying sadness that reminded her too much of his father. Ryan forced a smile and took a large bite of the mousse, not wanting to appear rude. The rich chocolate hit his throat just as he tried to swallow, but something went wrong. The thick consistency combined with his stress and rushed eating created a perfect storm. The dessert lodged in his throat, and suddenly he couldn't breathe. At first, people thought he was simply coughing. Ryan's face began turning red as he stood from his chair, hands instinctively going to his throat. Mrs. Henderson patted his back gently, assuming he just needed a moment to clear his throat. But when Ryan's eyes widened with panic and he began making choking sounds, the gravity became clear. "Help! Someone help!" Mrs. Henderson screamed, her voice cutting through elegant dinner conversation like a knife. The sound of her chair scraping back caused a domino effect of attention turning toward their table. Marcus, who had been shaking hands with donors near the stage, spun around to see his son stumbling away from the table, his face now turning purple. For a moment, time seemed suspended. This was his worst nightmare, losing the only family he had left, watching helplessly as his son fought for his life. The 300 guests in the ballroom seemed to freeze in collective shock. These were Chicago's elite, CEOs, politicians, celebrities, people accustomed to solving problems with money and influence. But money couldn't help Ryan breathe, and influence couldn't dislodge the chocolate mousse threatening to take his life. "Call 911!" someone shouted from the crowd, but everyone knew paramedics wouldn't arrive in time. Ryan was rapidly losing consciousness, his movements becoming weaker as his brain was deprived of oxygen. Dr. Patricia Walsh, a pediatric surgeon attending the gala, pushed through the crowd. "I'm a doctor, let me through!" But as she reached Ryan, she realized the horrible truth. She was a surgeon, skilled with scalpels and operating rooms, but had never performed the Heimlich maneuver in an emergency situation. Her hands shook as she positioned herself behind Ryan, knowing one wrong move could cause more damage. It was at this moment that fate intervened in the most unexpected way. 9-year-old Livia Santos had been feeling anxious all evening. Her sick feeling wasn't physical. It was intuitive worry of a child who sensed something was wrong in the world. She had called her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, asking if her mother could come home, not because she was ill, but because she felt scared and couldn't explain why. Mrs. Rodriguez, a kind woman in her 60s who had helped Maria with childcare for years, made the decision to bring Livia to the hotel. "Your mama is working hard to make money for your future, mija," she said as they drove. "But maybe seeing you will make her smile after a long day." They arrived at the Fairmont just as the emergency was unfolding. Livia and Mrs. Rodriguez entered through the service entrance, the same way Maria entered each day for work. They were walking down the hallway toward the kitchen when they heard the commotion from the ballroom. "What's happening?" Mrs. Rodriguez wondered aloud, and Livia, with the fearless curiosity of childhood, slipped away from her guardian and peered through the service doors into the elegant ballroom. What she saw made her heart race. A teenage boy was choking, his face turning blue, while adults stood around looking helpless. In that moment, Livia didn't see fancy clothes or expensive jewelry. She didn't see the difference between her simple jeans and t-shirt and the formal attire of guests. She saw someone who needed help, and she knew exactly what to do. At school, Livia had been the star student in their recent health and safety week. Ms. Peterson had taught all fourth graders basic first aid, including the Heimlich maneuver. While other children giggled or got distracted, Livia had paid attention with the intensity she brought to everything she considered important. She had practiced on the plastic dummy until she could perform the technique perfectly. Without hesitation, the 9-year-old girl pushed through the crowd of adults. Her small size allowed her to slip between people too shocked to notice her. By the time she reached Ryan, he had collapsed to his knees, his eyes rolling back as consciousness faded. "I know how to help," Livia announced in her clear, confident voice, cutting through the chaos like a bell. The adults around her stared in amazement as this tiny girl positioned herself behind the much larger teenager. Dr. Walsh started to protest. What could a child do that she couldn't? But something in Livia's demeanor, the calm confidence in her green eyes, made the doctor step back and give her room to work. Livia wrapped her small arms around Ryan's torso from behind, her hands finding the correct position just below his rib cage. She had practiced this exact scenario dozens of times, but never imagined she would use it to save someone's life. Taking a deep breath, she pulled upward and inward with surprising strength, using her entire body weight to create the necessary force. Nothing happened on the first attempt. Ryan's body was limp, his breathing completely stopped. The crowd held its collective breath, watching this small girl trying to save the life of someone twice her size. Marcus Sterling, who had been paralyzed with terror, found himself praying to a God he hadn't spoken to since his wife's death. Livia adjusted her position and tried again, this time with even more force. She thought about her mother, working so hard to take care of her, and how Maria had always taught her to help others whenever possible. She thought about Mrs. Peterson saying that knowing how to help people was one of the most important things you could learn in life. On the third attempt, the chocolate mousse dislodged with a wet, horrible sound that was simultaneously the most frightening and most beautiful noise anyone in that room had ever heard. Ryan gasped, his lungs filling with air as he collapsed forward onto his hands and knees, coughing and breathing heavily, but very much alive. The ballroom erupted in cheers and applause, but Livia barely heard it. She was focused on Ryan, making sure he was really okay, that his breathing was returning to normal. She stayed beside him, her small hand on his back, offering comfort in the way that children instinctively know how to do. Marcus Sterling, tears streaming down his face, rushed to his son's side. As he knelt beside Ryan, he found himself face to face with the little girl who had just saved his son's life. Her green eyes met his, and once again he felt that strange jolt of recognition, but this time it was stronger, more insistent. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for saving my son." Livia smiled, a radiant expression that lit up her entire face. "My mom says we should always help people when they need it," she said simply. "Is he going to be okay?" Before Marcus could answer, Dr. Walsh had taken over, checking Ryan's vital signs and ensuring there was no permanent damage. The paramedics arrived minutes later, but their emergency was over, thanks to a 9-year-old girl who had paid attention in health class. As Ryan was being checked over by the medical team, Marcus couldn't take his eyes off his rescuer. There was something about her that went beyond gratitude, something that called to him in a way he couldn't understand. Who was this remarkable child, and why did looking at her feel like looking into a mirror of his own past? "What's your name, sweetheart?" Marcus asked gently, his voice still shaky from the terror he'd just experienced. He studied Livia's face intently, that nagging sense of familiarity growing stronger with each passing moment. "Livia Santos," she replied with a shy smile, suddenly aware that she was surrounded by very important-looking adults in fancy clothes. "I'm 9 years old, and I go to Roosevelt Elementary." She paused, then added with the honesty that only children possess, "My mum works here tonight, but I think she already went home because I wasn't feeling good." The name Santos hit Marcus like a physical blow. Memories came flooding back, memories he had buried under years of building his empire, and later, grieving his wife, Maria Santos, 18 years ago. A brief but intense relationship during the summer before he launched his first major company. A woman with warm brown eyes and a laugh that could light up a room. A woman who had disappeared from his life as suddenly as she had entered it. "Your mother is Maria Santos?" Marcus asked, his heart beginning to race for entirely different reasons than it had during Ryan's crisis. Livia nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, she's the best mum in the whole world. She works really hard to take care of me." Her pride in her mother was evident in every word, but she didn't notice the way Marcus's face had gone pale, or how his hands had begun to tremble slightly. Mrs. Rodriguez chose that moment to find her missing charge. "Livia! There you are, mija. You can't just run off like that." She stopped short when she saw the scene before her. Her 9-year-old neighbor surrounded by Chicago's elite, with paramedics nearby and a teenage boy sitting on the floor looking shaken. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I helped," Livia exclaimed, running to the older woman's side. "That boy was choking and I did the Heimlich thing that Miss Peterson taught us at school." Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes widened as she took in the situation. She had raised 5 children of her own and had seen enough emergencies to recognize the aftermath of a serious crisis. "Dios mío, what happened here?" Dr. Walsh, who had been monitoring Ryan's condition, stepped forward to explain. "Your little girl just saved this young man's life. She performed the Heimlich maneuver perfectly when none of us adults could react fast enough. She's a hero." As the story was retold, Marcus found himself studying Livia with new eyes. Her dark hair had the same natural wave as his own. Her chin had the same determined set that he saw in the mirror every morning. But it was her eyes that convinced him, those green eyes that were unmistakably sterling eyes, the same eyes that looked back at him from family photographs going back generations. The math was simple and devastating. 18 years ago, he had dated Maria Santos for 3 months. It had been passionate and real. But he had been young and focused entirely on launching his company. When she had stopped returning his calls, he had assumed she had found someone else, someone who could give her more attention than a workaholic entrepreneur. He had never tried harder to reach her, too proud and too busy to chase after someone who seemed to have moved on. But what if she hadn't moved on? What if she had been trying to tell him something important? What if she had been pregnant? "Livia," Marcus said carefully, trying to keep his voice steady. "How old did you say you were?" 9, she replied cheerfully. "My birthday was last month. Mom always makes a big deal about birthdays, even though we don't have much money for fancy parties." She paused, then added with the matter-of-fact tone children use when discussing their realities. "But we always have cake, and she always finds a way to get me something special." 9 years old, born in July, the timeline fit perfectly with when he and Maria had been together. Marcus felt the world shifting beneath his feet as the implications crashed over him. This wasn't just the little girl who had saved his son's life. This might be his daughter. His daughter, who had been raised by a single mother working multiple jobs, who lived in a world so different from Ryan's privileged existence that they might as well have been from different planets. Ryan, who had been quietly recovering while sipping water provided by the paramedics, looked up at Livia with newfound curiosity. "You really saved my life," he said, his voice still rough from the trauma his throat had endured. "I don't know how to thank you." Livia blushed, unused to so much attention. "You don't have to thank me. Mom says helping people is just what you're supposed to do." She studied Ryan's face with the direct gaze that children haven't yet learned to soften. "You look sad. Even though you're not choking anymore. Are you okay?" The question, asked with such innocent concern, hit Ryan harder than he expected. Here was a little girl who had just saved his life, and she was worried about his emotional well-being. When was the last time someone had asked him if he was okay and actually waited for a real answer? It's complicated," Ryan said, glancing at his father. "Sometimes being okay isn't as simple as just breathing." Livia nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense to her. "Mom says that sometimes people can be hurt in ways you can't see. She says that's why we have to be extra kind to everyone, because you never know what they're going through." Marcus felt tears threatening again, but this time they weren't from fear or relief. They were from a complex mixture of loss, regret, and wonder. If this child was indeed his daughter, she had been raised with wisdom and compassion that he wasn't sure he had ever taught Ryan. Maria had done something extraordinary, raising a daughter who could save lives and comfort strangers with equal grace. "Mr. Sterling," Mrs. Rodriguez interrupted gently, recognizing the intensity of the moment but concerned about getting Livia home. "We should probably let you get back to your evening. It's getting late for a little one to be out." "Wait," Marcus said quickly. Perhaps too quickly. I would like to make sure Livia is properly recognized for what she did tonight. Perhaps there's some way I could meet with her mother to discuss a reward, or..." He trailed off, realizing he sounded desperate but unable to stop himself. Mrs. Rodriguez looked puzzled. In her experience, rich people didn't usually follow up on their promises to reward good deeds, but there was something in Marcus Sterling's eyes that seemed genuine, almost urgent. "Maria works very hard, sir," she said carefully. "She has 2 jobs and doesn't have much time for meetings, but I know she would want to know that Livia helped someone tonight. She would be very proud." "2 jobs," Marcus repeated, the guilt hitting him like a physical pain. While he lived in a mansion and worried about which investment portfolio to adjust, the mother of his possible daughter was working 2 jobs to make ends meet. If he was right about Livia's parentage, then he had a responsibility that went far beyond tonight's heroic rescue. "What kind of work does your mother do?" he asked Livia directly, trying to sound casual despite the emotional storm raging inside him. "She cleans office buildings at night and works for the catering company during the day," Livia replied matter-of-factly. "She says work is work, and all honest work is good work, but sometimes I hear her crying when she thinks I'm asleep, and I know it's because she's tired." The image of Maria crying from exhaustion while he lived in luxury was almost too much for Marcus to bear. He had to know the truth, and he had to know it soon, but he also had to be careful. If he was wrong, he would look like a madman. If he was right, he was about to turn several lives upside down. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he said, pulling out his business card, "please give this to Maria. Tell her that Marcus Sterling would like to speak with her about her daughter's heroic actions tonight. Tell her..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Tell her it's about more than just saying thank you." Mrs. Rodriguez took the card with obvious reluctance. She had lived long enough to be suspicious of promises from rich men, especially when those promises involved single mothers and their children. But she also recognized that Livia had done something truly remarkable tonight, and perhaps some good could come of it. "I'll give her your card," she said finally, "but don't expect her to call right away. Maria is very protective of Livia, and she doesn't trust easily." "I understand," Marcus replied. Though inside he was screaming with impatience. He wanted answers now, wanted to know if this beautiful, brave little girl was his daughter, wanted to start making up for 9 years of lost time immediately. But he also understood that he had no rights here, no claim to make demands. If Livia was his daughter, It was because Maria had carried that burden alone for 9 years, and she deserved to control how this revelation unfolded. As Mrs. Rodriguez prepared to leave with Livia, the little girl turned back to Ryan one more time. "I hope you feel better," she said simply. "And remember, if you're ever sad about things you can't see, talking to someone you trust always helps." With that wisdom that seemed far beyond her years, Livia Santos walked out of the Fairmont Hotel and back into her modest life, leaving behind a father and half-brother who were both forever changed by her presence. Marcus watched her go, his heart breaking and healing simultaneously, knowing that tomorrow he would have to find a way to learn the truth that could reshape everything he thought he knew about his life. The charity gala was over, but the real story was just beginning. And somewhere across town, Maria Santos was about to receive a business card that would force her to confront the secret she had protected for 9 years. The secret of Livia's true father and the choice she had made to raise her daughter alone, rather than disrupt the life of a man who seemed to have moved on without her. But tonight, as the Fairmont Hotel emptied and the staff cleaned up the remnants of the evening that had changed everything, Marcus Sterling stood in the parking lot with his son, both of them breathing the cool Chicago air and understanding that their family had just grown by one remarkable little girl, even if they didn't yet know how to make that miracle a reality. Maria Santos arrived home to find Mrs. Rodriguez waiting in her living room, with Livia already fast asleep on the couch, still wearing her school clothes. The apartment was small but immaculately clean. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen that doubled as Maria's home office, where she balanced budgets and planned their carefully managed life. "How is she?" Maria asked quietly, automatically checking Livia's forehead for fever, even though Mrs. Rodriguez had texted that there was no real emergency. "She's fine, mija. She wasn't really sick," Mrs. Rodriguez said, her voice carrying an odd tone that Maria couldn't quite identify. "She was just worried about something. You know how sensitive that child is." Maria nodded, understanding completely. Livia had always been intuitive, able to sense things that adults missed. It was both a gift and a burden for such a young child. "Thank you for bringing her to the hotel. I know that wasn't easy for you." Mrs. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Maria, we need to talk about what happened tonight." She reached into her purse and pulled out Marcus Sterling's business card. "Your little girl saved someone's life tonight." Maria's world stopped spinning. She took the card with trembling fingers, staring at the name that had haunted her dreams for 9 years. Marcus Sterling, the man she had loved with every fiber of her being, the man who had stopped returning her calls when she discovered she was pregnant, the man she had tried desperately to reach, only to be blocked by assistance and security systems designed to keep people like her away from people like him. "Tell me everything," Maria whispered, sinking into the chair across from Mrs. Rodriguez. The story Mrs. Rodriguez told was like something from a movie. Livia, small and fearless, saving the life of a teenager while hundreds of adults stood frozen. The boy who couldn't breathe, the perfect execution of the Heimlich maneuver, the crowd's amazement. And Marcus Sterling, kneeling beside his son and the little girl who had rescued him, asking questions about Livia's mother with an intensity that Mrs. Rodriguez found unsettling. "He asked too many questions, Maria," Mrs. Rodriguez said gently. "Questions about you, about Livia's age, about your work, and the way he looked at her." She paused, studying Maria's pale face. "There's something you haven't told me, isn't there?" Maria looked down at the business card in her hands. At the phone number she had memorized from calling it dozens of times 9 years ago. The number that had led to assistants who promised to pass along messages that were never returned. The number that represented doors that had been firmly closed in her face. "He's Livia's father," Maria said quietly. the words feeling strange in her mouth after years of silence. "I tried to tell him when I found out I was pregnant, but he was launching his company and I couldn't get through to him. His people made it very clear that he didn't want to be bothered with personal matters." Mrs. Rodriguez sat back in her chair, the pieces falling into place. "Ay, Dios mío. And now? Now his son is alive because of his daughter, and he doesn't even know it," Maria said, tears beginning to fall. "What am I supposed to do with that?" The question hung in the air between them. For 9 years, Maria had built a life based on the assumption that Marcus Sterling didn't want to know about his daughter. She had created a world where she and Livia were a complete family, where they didn't need anyone else, where love and hard work were enough to overcome any obstacle. But looking at his business card, remembering the desperation in her voice all those years ago when she had begged his assistant to put her through, Maria began to wonder if she had made the right choice. What if Marcus had never received her messages? What if he would have wanted to know about Livia? What if she had deprived her daughter of a father who would have loved her? "You have to call him," Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly. "That little girl deserves to know her father, and he deserves to know what an amazing daughter he has." "It's not that simple," Maria protested. "Livia's life is here, with me. She has school, friends, routines. Marcus Sterling lives in a different world. He probably has a wife, other children. I can't just show up and destroy his life with news about a daughter he never knew existed." "His wife died 3 years ago," Mrs. Rodriguez said quietly. "It was in all the newspapers. And that boy tonight, Ryan, he's his only child." "Was his only child," she corrected herself meaningfully. The information hit Maria like a physical blow. Marcus was a widower. He had suffered loss, just as she had suffered the loss of her dreams when she found herself pregnant and alone. His son, Livia's half-brother, had nearly died tonight, and only Livia's quick thinking had saved him. "What if he doesn't want her?" Maria asked, voicing her deepest fear. "What if he thinks I'm just after his money? What if he tries to take her away from me?" Mrs. Rodriguez reached across the space between their chairs and took Maria's hands. "Mija, I saw the way he looked at that little girl tonight. I saw the recognition in his eyes, even before he knew who she was. A father knows his child, even when his mind hasn't caught up to what his heart already understands." Maria looked over at Livia, sleeping peacefully on the couch, her dark hair spread across the cushion like a halo. She looked so young, so innocent, so completely unaware that her life was about to change in ways that Maria couldn't even begin to predict. "She asks about her father sometimes," Maria admitted. "I've always told her that her daddy lives far away and can't be with us, but that he would love her if he knew her. What if that was a lie? What if he doesn't want anything to do with us?" "Then you'll deal with that when it happens," Mrs. Rodriguez said practically. "But you can't make that decision for him. And more importantly, you can't make it for Livia. She saved his son's life tonight, Maria. That has to mean something." After Mrs. Rodriguez left, Maria sat in her small kitchen, staring at Marcus's business card while drinking cold coffee from her favorite mug. A Mother's Day gift from Livia that read "World's Best Mom" in crayon bright letters. The apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the old refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on the street below. She thought about the night Livia was born, alone in the county hospital because she couldn't afford a private room. She thought about the years of working multiple jobs, of missing school plays because she had to work, of the sacrifices they had both made. She thought about Livia's questions about her father, and the careful answers Maria had crafted to protect both her daughter and herself from the pain of rejection. "Mama!" a sleepy voice called from the living room. Livia appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing her eyes and still wearing her school clothes. "You're home. Mrs. Rodriguez said you had to work late because someone needed help." Maria quickly slipped the business card into her pocket and opened her arms to her daughter. "Come here, baby. How are you feeling? Mrs. Rodriguez said you weren't feeling well." Livia climbed into her mother's lap, something she was almost getting too big for, but which Maria treasured. "I felt weird all day. Like something important was going to happen, but I feel better now that you're home." Maria held her daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo and feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. This was her world, this little girl who had made every sacrifice worthwhile. But was she being selfish by keeping Livia from knowing her father? Was she being protective, or was she being possessive? "Mama, Mrs. Rodriguez told me something amazing," Livia said, pulling back to look at her mother's face. "She said I helped save someone's life tonight, a boy who was choking at the fancy hotel where you work." Maria's heart skipped a beat. "She told you about that?" "She said I did the Heimlich thing we learned at school, and that everyone was really proud of me. She said the boy's father wants to say thank you." Livia's eyes were bright with excitement and curiosity. "Can we meet him, Mama? I want to make sure the boy is okay." Maria felt her heart breaking and mending at the same time. Her daughter's pure desire to help others, to check on someone she had saved, was so innocent and beautiful. But she had no idea she was asking to meet her own father and half-brother. "We'll see, baby," Maria whispered, knowing that tomorrow she would have to make the phone call that would change their lives forever. The next morning arrived with crisp October air that made Chicago feel alive with possibility. Marcus Sterling had barely slept, spending most of the night in his home office, staring at his computer screen and trying to decide how to handle the situation that could change everything. His mansion in Lincoln Park felt emptier than usual, the silence broken only by the grandfather clock marking each passing hour. Ryan appeared in the doorway around 7 a.m., still in his pajamas. His throat visibly bruised, but his breathing normal. "Dad, you didn't sleep again, did you?" The concern in his voice reminded Marcus of his late wife, Catherine, who used to worry about his workaholic tendencies. "I had some things to think about," Marcus replied, closing his laptop. "How are you feeling this morning? Any pain when you swallow?" "A little sore, but I'm okay." Ryan sat down in the leather chair across from his father's desk. "Dad, about last night, that little girl who saved me. There was something different about the way you looked at her. Do you know her?" Marcus felt his chest tighten. Ryan was perceptive, always had been, even when he pretended not to care about anything beyond his phone and his friends. "I'm not sure yet," Marcus said carefully. "But I think she might be very important to our family." "What do you mean?" Ryan asked, his attention fully focused now. Marcus stood up and walked to the window overlooking his perfectly manicured garden. "Son, there are things about my past, about the time before I met your mother, that I never talked about, relationships I had, people I cared about but lost touch with." He turned back to face Ryan. "I think that little girl's mother is someone I knew a long time ago." "Like dated?" Ryan asked with the directness that teenagers possessed. "More than dated," Marcus admitted. "I loved her, Ryan, but I was young and focused on building the company, and things ended badly. I thought she had moved on, found someone else." He paused, the weight of his next words heavy in the air. "But what if she was trying to tell me something important? What if she was pregnant?" Ryan's eyes widened as the implications hit him. "You think that girl, Livia, might be my sister?" "Half-sister," Marcus corrected gently. "And yes, I think there's a very good chance." The room fell silent as both Sterling men processed this possibility. For Ryan, who had grown up as an only child, carrying the weight of being the sole heir to his father's empire, the idea of having a sister was both thrilling and terrifying. For Marcus, it represented years of missed opportunities, lost time, and the chance for redemption. "What are you going to do?" Ryan asked finally. "I'm going to call her mother today," Marcus said, his voice steadying with determination. "And I'm going to ask for the truth, whatever it might be." Meanwhile, across town in their small apartment, Maria Santos was having her own difficult morning. She had called in sick to both her jobs, something she had never done unless Livia was genuinely ill. But today, she needed time to think, to figure out how to handle the phone call that could change everything. After dropping Livia off at school, Maria drove to her favorite coffee shop, the one where she used to study when she was taking night classes to become a certified nursing assistant. She sat in the corner booth with Marcus's business card on the table in front of her, staring at the numbers that could unlock a door she had closed 9 years ago. At 10 a.m., she finally dialed. "Sterling Enterprises, Mr. Sterling's office," came the crisp voice of his assistant. "This is Maria Santos," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Mr. Sterling asked me to call regarding my daughter, Livia." There was a pause, then, "Please hold, Ms. Santos. Mr. Sterling is expecting your call." Within seconds, Marcus's familiar voice came on the line. Maria. Just her name, spoken with such a mixture of wonder, relief, and apprehension that Maria felt tears spring to her eyes. It had been 9 years since she had heard him say her name, but it sounded exactly the same. "Hello, Marcus," she replied softly. "Thank you for calling. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Maria admitted. "Marcus, we need to talk. About Livia. About everything." "Yes, we do," he agreed. "Maria, I have to ask you something. And I need you to be completely honest with me. Is Livia my daughter?" The question hung in the air between them. 9 years of secrets and protection and fear condensed into 5 simple words. Maria closed her eyes, remembering the young woman who had tried so desperately to reach him all those years ago. The woman who had finally given up and decided to raise her daughter alone rather than continue being rejected. "Yes," she whispered. "She is." The silence that followed was deafening. Maria could hear Marcus breathing on the other end of the line, could imagine him sitting in his expensive office, trying to process the fact that he had a daughter he had never known existed. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked finally, his voice thick with emotion. "I tried," Maria said, her own voice breaking. "Marcus, I called you dozens of times when I found out I was pregnant. I left messages with your assistants. I sent letters to your office. I even came to your building once, but security wouldn't let me up. Your people made it very clear that you didn't want to be bothered with personal matters from your past." Marcus felt sick. He remembered that time in his life, how focused he had been on the company, how he had instructed his staff to handle all personal calls so he could concentrate on work. He had assumed Maria had moved on, but what if his own assistants had been blocking her attempts to reach him? "I never got those messages," he said quietly. "Maria, I swear to you, I never knew." "I finally gave up trying," Maria continued. "I decided that if you didn't want to be part of her life, then we would be fine on our own. And we have been fine, Marcus. Livia is happy, healthy, smart, kind. She's the most amazing person I've ever known." "She saved my son's life," Marcus said. "Did you know that Ryan is my only other child? My wife died 3 years ago, and I thought Ryan was all I had left in the world. But Livia, she gave him back to me, and now I find out she's my daughter too." Maria felt the tears flowing freely now. She's always asked about her father. "I told her that her daddy lived far away and couldn't be with us, but that he would love her if he knew her. I hope that wasn't a lie." "Marcus, it wasn't a lie," Marcus said fiercely. "Maria, I want to meet her. I want to be part of her life if you'll let me. I want to make up for 9 years of not being there." "It's not that simple," Maria protested. "She doesn't know who you are. She doesn't know that the boy she saved is her half-brother." I've built our whole life around it being just the two of us. I can't just tell her that suddenly she has a billionaire father and a teenage brother. Then we'll take it slow, Marcus said. We'll figure it out together. But Maria, please don't shut me out again. Please give me a chance to know my daughter. 3 days later, Maria found herself standing outside Roosevelt Elementary School with Marcus Sterling, both of them waiting nervously for Livia to emerge from her fourth-grade classroom. They had agreed to meet on neutral ground, to let Livia see them together without the pressure of being in either of their homes. Marcus had spent those 3 days learning everything he could about his daughter. Maria had shared photos, school reports, stories about Livia's personality and dreams. He knew that she loved animals and wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. He knew that she was reading at a 6th-grade level and had taught herself to play simple songs on a keyboard she had bought at a garage sale. "Are you sure about this?" Maria asked for the 3rd time, smoothing down her best dress, a simple blue outfit she had bought for job interviews but rarely had occasion to wear. "I'm terrified," Marcus admitted, adjusting his own clothes. He had deliberately chosen casual attire, khakis and a polo shirt, hoping to appear less intimidating than his usual business suits. "But I need to meet her properly. I need to start somewhere." The school bell rang, and within minutes children began pouring out of the building. Marcus spotted Livia immediately. She was unmistakable with her dark hair and those sterling green eyes. She was walking with a friend, both girls giggling about something as they made their way toward the pickup area. "Mama!" Livia called out when she spotted Maria, running toward them with her backpack bouncing behind her. She stopped short when she noticed the man standing beside her mother. "Oh, who's this?" "Livia, sweetheart," Maria said, her voice carefully controlled. "This is Mr. Sterling. He's the father of the boy you helped the other night." Livia's eyes widened with recognition and excitement. "Really? How is Ryan? Is he okay? I was worried about him." Marcus felt his heart melt at his daughter's immediate concern for her half-brother. "He's doing very well, thanks to you," he said, kneeling down to her eye level. "In fact, he wanted me to thank you personally. You saved his life, Livia." "I just did what Miss Peterson taught us," Livia said shyly, but she was clearly pleased with the praise. "It was scary, but I knew I had to help." "You were very brave," Marcus said, studying her face and marveling at how much she looked like him, like Ryan, like the Sterling family photos in his study. "I was wondering, would you and your mother like to have dinner with Ryan and me? He's been asking about you. And I thought you might like to see for yourself that he's okay." That evening, Tony's Pizza was bustling with families, enjoying the casual atmosphere and incredible food. Marcus and Ryan arrived first, both of them fidgeting nervously in a corner booth. Ryan had been stunned when his father told him the truth about Livia. But after the initial shock, he had become excited about meeting his half-sister properly. "What if she doesn't like me?" Ryan asked, adjusting his casual sweater for the 10th time. "What if this is all too weird for her?" "Just be yourself," Marcus advised, though he was asking himself the same questions. "She's your sister, Ryan. That has to count for something." When Maria and Livia walked through the door, Marcus felt his breath catch. Livia was wearing a simple pink dress with white tights and looked absolutely beautiful. But it was the way she immediately scanned the restaurant until she spotted Ryan that made Marcus's heart soar. "Ryan," Livia called out, pulling her mother toward their table. "You look so much better. Does your throat still hurt?" Ryan stood up as they approached, and Marcus was struck by how much the two children looked alike. They had the same dark hair, the same strong jawline, the same intelligent eyes. They were unmistakably siblings, even though neither of them understood that yet. "It feels much better," Ryan said, his usual teenage coolness melting away in the face of Livia's genuine concern. "I can't believe how brave you were." I was so scared, and you just knew exactly what to do." The conversation flowed naturally as they ordered pizza and settled into the comfortable booth. Livia asked Ryan about school, his interests, his friends. Ryan, in turn, was charmed by his little sister's curiosity and intelligence. He found himself telling her about tennis, about his struggles with expectations, about how lonely it could be being an only child. "I've always wanted a brother or sister," Livia said wistfully. "Mama says some families are just smaller, but I always thought it would be fun to have someone to talk to who wasn't a grown-up." Ryan's eyes met his father's across the table, both of them thinking the same thing. Marcus cleared his throat carefully. "Livia, there's something I need to tell you, something important about who I am and who you are." Maria tensed, her hand instinctively moving to cover Livia's on the table. "Marcus, maybe we should—" "It's okay, Maria," Marcus said gently. "She deserves to know." He turned to Livia, who was looking at him with curious, trusting eyes. "Livia, I'm not just Ryan's father. I'm your father too." The restaurant seemed to fade away as Livia processed this information. Her eyes moved from Marcus to Ryan to her mother, confusion and wonder warring on her young face. "My daddy," she whispered. "You're my real daddy." "Yes, sweetheart," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't know about you until the night you saved Ryan. Your mother tried to tell me when you were born, but I never got her messages. I've missed 9 years of your life, and I'm sorry about that. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of your life now." Livia looked at Ryan with new eyes. "Does that mean, are you my brother?" "Half-brother," Ryan said with a growing smile. "But yes, I guess that makes you my little sister." For a moment, Livia sat in stunned silence. Then, to everyone's amazement, she began to cry, not from sadness, but from overwhelming joy. "I always wanted a daddy and a brother," she sobbed happily. "I used to pray for them every night." Marcus felt tears streaming down his own face as he watched his daughter process the news that she finally had the family she had always dreamed of. But even as joy filled his heart, he knew this was only the beginning of a much more complicated journey. 2 weeks after that life-changing dinner, the Sterling family was still figuring out how to navigate their new reality. Marcus had insisted on providing financial support immediately, paying off Maria's debts and setting up a college fund for Livia. But beyond the money, he was struggling with how to build a relationship with a daughter who had lived her entire life without him. The arrangement they had worked out was careful and gradual. Marcus would pick up Livia from school twice a week, taking her for ice cream or to the park while Maria worked her afternoon shift. Ryan had asked to join these outings whenever possible, genuinely enjoying his role as big brother. On this particular Wednesday afternoon, Marcus found himself sitting on a bench at Lincoln Park Zoo, watching Livia feed the ducks, while Ryan pointed out different animals. The sight of his 2 children together filled him with a contentment he hadn't felt since Catherine's death. "Dad," Ryan said, sitting down beside him, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," Marcus replied, noting that Ryan seemed more mature, more thoughtful, since discovering he had a sister. "Are you going to ask Maria to marry you?" The question caught Marcus completely off guard. "What? Ryan, where did that come from?" "I see the way you look at her," Ryan said with teenage bluntness. "And the way she looks at you when she thinks no one is watching. Plus, it would make sense, right? We'd all be a real family then." Marcus watched Maria, who was sitting on another bench reading while keeping an eye on Livia. Even in her simple work clothes, she was beautiful. More than that, she was kind, intelligent, and had raised an incredible daughter under circumstances that would have defeated many people. "It's complicated, son," Marcus said finally. "Your mother died only 3 years ago. I loved her very much. And Maria. We have a lot of history, a lot of hurt feelings to work through. But you did love her once, right before Mom?" "Yes." Marcus admitted. "I loved her very much. I was just too young and too focused on work to appreciate what I had." Before Marcus could respond further, Livia came running over, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Daddy, did you see the baby giraffe? He's so tall already." Marcus's heart swelled every time she called him Daddy. It had taken her exactly 3 days to start using the word naturally, as if she had been waiting her whole life to have someone to call by that name. "Do you think Mama and Daddy will get married?" Livia asked seriously. "Like in the movies, where families get put back together?" Ryan shot his father a meaningful look. "I don't know. What do you think?" "I think they should," Livia said matter-of-factly. "Mama gets sad sometimes when she thinks I'm not looking. And Daddy looks lonely too, even when he's smiling. If they got married, maybe they wouldn't be sad anymore." That evening, after dropping Livia off at home, Marcus made a decision. Instead of saying goodbye at the door as he usually did, he asked Maria if they could talk privately. "Livia's doing her homework," Maria said, inviting him into their small living room. "She should be busy for at least an hour." Marcus looked around the apartment, noting how Maria had made it warm and welcoming despite its modest size. Family photos covered one wall, most featuring Livia at various ages, but Marcus was touched to see that Maria had recently added pictures from their outings together. "She's amazing, Maria," Marcus said, settling onto the couch beside her. "You've done an incredible job raising her. I'm in awe of both of you. She's always been special." Maria replied, her voice soft with pride. "Even as a baby, she seemed to understand things, and she's so excited about having a father and brother. It's like all her dreams came true at once." "What about your dreams?" Marcus asked gently. "What did you want when you were her age?" Maria laughed, but there was sadness in it. "I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to get married and have kids, and live in a house with a yard where my children could play. Simple dreams, really." "They don't sound simple to me," Marcus said. "They sound beautiful. And Maria, they don't have to stay dreams." She looked at him with confusion. "What do you mean?" Marcus took her hands in his, noting how small and work-worn they were compared to his own. "I mean that I've been thinking about what Ryan said earlier, about us, about being a real family." "Marcus," Maria started, but he gently interrupted. "I know it's complicated. I know we have history and hurt, and you have every reason not to trust me. But Livia isn't the only one whose dreams came true that night at the hotel. I got my daughter back, yes, but I also got you back, and I don't want to waste another 9 years." Maria felt tears beginning to form. "You don't understand. I'm not the same person I was 18 years ago. I'm tired, Marcus. I work all the time just to make ends meet. I don't have fancy clothes or know how to fit into your world." "You're not simple," Marcus said fiercely. "You're extraordinary. You raised the most remarkable child I've ever known. Maria Santos, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making up for the years we lost?" Before Maria could answer, they heard a crash from Livia's bedroom, followed by their daughter calling for help. They rushed to find her standing beside her overturned desk chair, papers scattered everywhere. "I was trying to reach my art supplies and fell," Livia explained sheepishly. "But I'm okay. I heard you talking, and did Daddy just ask you to marry him?" Maria and Marcus looked at each other, then at their daughter's hopeful face. "Yes, he did," Maria said softly. "And?" Livia asked, bouncing slightly with excitement. Maria looked back at Marcus, seeing in his face the promise of the life she had always dreamed of. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you." Livia's squeal of joy could probably be heard 3 blocks away as she launched herself into her parents' arms, finally complete with the family she had prayed for every night of her 9-year-old life. The engagement announcement sent shockwaves through Chicago's social scene. Marcus Sterling, one of the city's most eligible widowers, was marrying a single mother who worked as a waitress and office cleaner. The media attention was intense and not always kind, with some outlets questioning Maria's motives and others speculating about Marcus's judgment. But inside the Sterling mansion, where Maria and Livia had moved 2 weeks after the engagement, the family was learning to navigate their new reality with surprising grace. Livia had adapted to her new home with the resilience of childhood, though she insisted on keeping many of her old toys and books from the apartment, because they're part of my story too. Ryan had been the biggest surprise. Instead of resenting the changes to his previously quiet life, he had embraced his role as big brother with enthusiasm. He helped Livia with her homework, taught her to play tennis on their private court, and served as her protector when photographers tried to take pictures of the Sterling family princess. I never understood why people called our house empty before, Ryan told his father one evening as they watched Livia and Maria baking cookies in the kitchen. But now I get it. It wasn't really a home without them here. Marcus nodded, understanding exactly what his son meant. The mansion, that had felt like a mausoleum after Catherine's death, was now filled with laughter, music from Livia's keyboard practice, and the comfortable sounds of a real family. But not everyone was happy about the changes. Dr. Patricia Walsh, the pediatric surgeon who had been present the night Livia saved Ryan, had become a frequent critic in both social circles and medical conferences. She had been hoping to rekindle her brief romance with Marcus from years past, and the news of his engagement had not been well received. "It's obviously a gold-digger situation," Dr. Walsh confided to her friend during lunch at the Chicago Athletic Association. "A waitress suddenly claims that the billionaire is the father of her child, right after she conveniently saves his son's life. The timing is extremely suspicious." "But didn't genetic testing confirm paternity?" her friend asked. "Genetic testing can be manipulated," Dr. Walsh said darkly. "Mark my words. This whole family is going to come crashing down when the truth comes out." Unfortunately for the Sterling family, Dr. Walsh's skepticism wasn't limited to private conversations. She began reaching out to investigative journalists, planting seeds of doubt about Maria's story, and suggesting that a deeper investigation might reveal fraud, manipulation, or worse. Marcus first became aware of the campaign against his family when his head of security, James Mitchell, knocked on his office door with a grim expression. "Sir, we have a problem," James said, placing a folder on Marcus's desk. "Someone's been digging into Ms. Santos's background, asking questions about Livia's birth certificate, trying to find inconsistencies in the timeline." Marcus opened the folder to find copies of medical records, school documents, and even interviews with Maria's former neighbors. "Who's behind this?" "We're not certain yet, but the questions started after Dr. Patricia Walsh was seen meeting with a reporter from the Chicago Tribune, the same reporter who's been writing the more negative pieces about your engagement." Marcus felt a cold anger building in his chest. He remembered Dr. Walsh from the night at the hotel, remembered her attempts to take charge during Ryan's crisis and her obvious frustration when a 9-year-old girl succeeded where she had hesitated. "What kind of questions are they asking?" Marcus demanded. "They're suggesting that Ms. Santos might have known about your relationship with your late wife, that she might have planned the whole rescue scenario. They're even questioning whether Livia is really your daughter, despite the genetic testing." That evening, Marcus decided to tell Maria about the investigation. He found her in Livia's room, helping their daughter with a school project about family trees. The sight of them together made his heart ache with love and protectiveness. "We have a problem," he said gently after Livia went to brush her teeth. Marcus explained about the investigation, about Dr. Walsh's apparent campaign to discredit their family, about the questions being asked and the implications being suggested. With each word, He watched Maria's face grow paler and more stricken. "They think I planned this," Maria whispered. "They think I somehow orchestrated Ryan choking so Livia could save him and we could get money from you." "It's ridiculous, I know. But Maria, some people have a hard time believing in coincidences, especially when they involve this much money and social status." "Maybe they're right to be suspicious," Maria said, standing up abruptly. "Maybe I should take Livia and go back to our apartment before we ruin your reputation." "Don't you dare!" Marcus said fiercely. "Don't you dare let small-minded people make you doubt what we have." "I know who you are, Maria. I know our daughter. I know our love is real." The confrontation came on a rainy Thursday morning in November. Dr. Patricia Walsh had convinced the Chicago Tribune to run a front-page story questioning the legitimacy of the Sterling family's fairy tale romance, complete with quotes from unnamed sources suggesting that Maria Santos had manipulated the entire situation for financial gain. Marcus was in his office when his assistant buzzed him urgently. "Sir, Dr. Walsh is here demanding to see you. She says it's about your family's safety." "Send her in," Marcus said grimly. He had been expecting this moment, and he was ready for it. Dr. Walsh swept into his office wearing her white doctor's coat like armor, her expression a mixture of righteous indignation and barely concealed jealousy. "Marcus, I hope you'll listen to reason. I have evidence that your fiancé has been lying to you about everything." "Really?" "Oh," Marcus said coolly, not inviting her to sit down. "What kind of evidence?" "Hospital records showing inconsistencies in her story. Financial records proving she was in debt before suddenly targeting you. Witness statements suggesting she researched your family before that convenient rescue scene, Doctor." Walsh placed a manila folder on his desk with theatrical flourish. Marcus didn't even glance at the folder. "Patricia, are you really so desperate that you'd fabricate evidence to break up my family?" "Fabricate?" Dr. Walsh's voice rose indignantly. "Marcus, I'm trying to protect you. That woman is using her daughter to manipulate you." "The whole rescue was staged." "The rescue where my son nearly died?" Marcus asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Are you suggesting that Maria somehow made Ryan choke on his dessert? That a 9-year-old girl was acting when she saved his life?" "I'm suggesting that Maria Santos knew exactly who would be at that gala, knew exactly where to position herself and her daughter for maximum impact. The whole thing is too convenient, Marcus. Can't you see that?" Marcus stood up slowly, his impressive height making Dr. Walsh take an involuntary step backward. "What I see is a woman who's jealous that she lost her chance with me years ago. What I see is someone so bitter about my happiness that she's willing to attack an innocent child and her mother." "This isn't about jealousy," Dr. Walsh protested, but her flushed face suggested otherwise. "This is about protecting you from a gold digger and her daughter." "Her daughter," Marcus said quietly, "is also my daughter. And if you ever suggest again that Livia is anything other than the remarkable child she is, you'll be dealing with my lawyers." Dr. Walsh's face went pale. "Your daughter? But that's impossible. The timeline doesn't—" "The timeline is perfect," Marcus interrupted. "I have genetic testing, birth records, and most importantly, I have the truth. Maria tried to contact me when she was pregnant 9 years ago. My own staff blocked her calls because I was too focused on work to be bothered with personal matters. That's my fault, not hers." "But Marcus, surely you can see how this looks to everyone else. The coincidence of it all." "Sometimes," came a small voice from the doorway. "Coincidences happen because they're supposed to." Everyone turned to see Livia standing in the doorway, holding Maria's hand. Marcus's assistant appeared behind them, looking apologetic. "I'm sorry, sir. They said it was urgent." "It is urgent," Livia said, walking bravely into the office despite the tension radiating from Dr. Walsh. "Mrs. Rodriguez called Mama." and said people were saying mean things about us in the newspaper. We came to see if Daddy was okay." Dr. Walsh stared at the little girl, seeing for the first time the unmistakable sterling green eyes, the strong jawline, the confident posture that was pure Marcus. The resemblance was so obvious that her accusations crumbled before she could voice them. "Livia," Marcus said gently, kneeling down to his daughter's level. "Dr. Walsh was just leaving, but thank you for coming to check on me." "Are you the lady who thinks Mama is lying?" Livia asked Dr. Walsh with the direct honesty that only children possessed. Dr. Walsh looked down at this remarkable child, the girl who had saved Ryan's life, who clearly adored her parents, who radiated the kind of genuine goodness that couldn't be faked, and felt her certainty wavering. Dr. Walsh began, then stopped. Looking at this family together, seeing the obvious love between them, the natural way they fit together, she realized that her jealousy had blinded her to the truth. This wasn't a manipulation or a scheme. This was a family that had found each other against all odds. "I think I made a mistake," Dr. Walsh said quietly. I'm sorry." She turned and walked out of the office, leaving behind the folder of evidence that would never see the light of day. Marcus scooped Livia up in his arms while pulling Maria close with his other arm. "How did I get so lucky?" he murmured into Maria's hair. "We all got lucky," Maria replied, watching through the window as Dr. Walsh got into her car and drove away. "Sometimes the best things in life happen when we least expect them." "Daddy," Livia said seriously, "are we still going to get married and be a real family?" "Nothing," Marcus said firmly. "Nothing in this world could stop that from happening." 6 months later, on a beautiful spring day in the gardens of the Sterling mansion, Marcus and Maria exchanged vows in front of their children and closest friends. Ryan served as his father's best man, while Livia was the most radiant flower girl Chicago had ever seen. As they kissed to seal their marriage, the same Chicago Tribune photographer who had once questioned their love story captured the moment for the front page. This time the headline read, "Chicago's most inspiring love story. Sterling family proves miracles do happen." And in the crowd of wedding guests, Mrs. Rodriguez wiped away tears of joy, remembering the night she had brought a worried little girl to check on her mother. Never imagining that act of love would reunite a family and create the most beautiful fairy tale Chicago had ever witnessed. The Sterling family was finally complete, bound together by love, strengthened by truth, and blessed by the kind of miracle that happens when brave hearts refuse to give up on each other.